The declaration. The golden spotlights of the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom illuminated Rohan Varma as he stood at the podium, accepting yet another Entrepreneur of the Year award. At 35, he had built Pinnacle Technologies from a startup in his garage to a multi-billion-dollar empire that had revolutionized renewable energy storage systems. "Mr. Varma," called out a reporter during the Q&A, "with all your success, fans are curious. Is there someone special in your life? Any plans to settle down?" Rohan's lips curved into that signature half-smile that had graced dozens of magazine covers. He adjusted his custom-tailored Armani jacket and leaned toward the microphone. "When you've built something that changes the world," he said with practiced charm, "you realize ordinary doesn't cut it anymore. Ordinary conversations, ordinary ambitions." He paused for effect. "Ordinary women. They simply don't impress me. The person I'd consider sharing my life with would need to be truly extraordinary." The comment rippled through social media within hours. Some praised his honesty, others condemned his arrogance. By morning, "Prime Too Good for Ordinary" was trending, with Rohan's face plastered across every entertainment news outlet. In a modest apartment across the city, Priya Nair scrolled through her phone during breakfast, rolling her eyes at the headline. "Billionaire claims ordinary women don't impress me. Continues search for extraordinary partner." "What a self-important jerk," she muttered, setting down her phone to finish grading papers from her kindergarten class. At 28, Priya found more fulfillment in helping her students discover their potential than in chasing headlines or fortune. Her small classroom at Greenwood Elementary might not change the world according to people like Rohan Varma, but it changed the worlds of 22 children every day, and that was enough for her. Later that week, Priya found herself at the annual Bright Futures fundraiser, volunteering as she did every year. The event raised money for educational resources in underfunded schools, a cause close to her heart. She wore a simple blue dress, the nicest one she owned, and busied herself organizing the silent auction items. "Ms. Nair, they need more help." At the registration table, her fellow teacher Daniel called out. As Priya made her way across the ballroom, she nearly collided with a tall figure in an impeccably tailored suit. "Excuse me," she said, stepping aside without looking up. "Entirely my fault," came a smooth, deep voice. Priya glanced up and froze. Standing before her was Rohan Varma himself, looking even more polished in person than in his photographs. His dark eyes assessed her briefly before moving on, dismissing her as quickly as he'd noticed her. What Priya didn't see was how Rohan turned to watch her walk away, intrigued by the woman who hadn't immediately recognized him, or worse, who had recognized him and hadn't cared. When the event organizer announced Pinnacle Technologies' surprising last-minute platinum sponsorship of the fundraiser, Priya couldn't help but wonder what someone like Rohan Varma was really doing at a teacher's charity event. She got her answer an hour later when she overheard him speaking with the superintendent about a new STEM initiative his company was launching, complete with cameras documenting his every philanthropic move. "Just another publicity stunt," she whispered to Daniel. But Rohan Varma, with his uncanny ability to sense when he was being talked about, turned suddenly, catching Priya's critical gaze. For a brief moment, their eyes locked across the room. Neither realized that this moment would be the first of many that would change both their lives forever. Unexpected encounters. 3 weeks after the fundraiser, Rohan found himself standing in the colorful hallway of Greenwood Elementary. This wasn't planned. His PR team had arranged for him to make an appearance at several schools receiving Pinnacle's new STEM grants, but Greenwood wasn't supposed to be on the list. Yet something had compelled him to add it personally. "Mr. Varma, we're absolutely thrilled to have you visit," gushed Principal Wilson, leading him down the corridor. "The children are so excited about the new science equipment." Rohan nodded absently, his eyes scanning each classroom they passed. He told himself he was merely inspecting how his company's donations were being used, but he knew there was another reason entirely. They turned a corner and stopped at room 112. A hand-painted sign decorated with fingerprints read, "Ms. Nair's class." Through the window, he could see her sitting in a tiny chair, completely absorbed in reading a story to a circle of wide-eyed 5-year-olds. One of our finest teachers, Principal Wilson said. Would you like to observe her class? Before Rohan could answer, the door opened and Priya stood there, surprise briefly flashing across her face before her expression settled into cool professionalism. Principal Wilson, she greeted, then turned to Rohan. Mr. Varma. What an unexpected honor. There was something in her tone that made Rohan suspect she didn't consider it much of an honor at all. Ms. Nair, Mr. Varma is visiting the schools benefiting from Pinnacle's STEM initiative, the principal explained. How generous, Priya replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Would you like to see what ordinary education looks like? Mr. Varma? Rohan felt his face warm, recognizing his own words thrown back at him. I'd be delighted. He recovered smoothly. The next hour was unlike anything Rohan had experienced. Priya didn't treat him as a VIP or fawn over his presence. Instead, she put him to work, having him help students with their science projects. Simple, experiments involving plants growing toward light. Miss Nair, look, my bean is growing, shouted a small boy named Zach, tugging on Rohan's sleeve by mistake. That's wonderful, Zach. Why don't you show Mr. Varma how you've been caring for it? Priya suggested, watching with barely concealed amusement as the child dragged the billionaire to a windowsill lined with paper cups. For 45 minutes, Rohan sat on a chair far too small for his frame, listening to children explain their observations with more enthusiasm than most of his board members showed during quarterly reports. When Zach proudly presented him with a crayon drawing of what appeared to be Rohan holding a giant bean plant, something unfamiliar stirred in his. Just after class, as the children filed out for recess, Priya approached him. Thank you for your patience with them, she said, gathering worksheets. Though I'm curious why you're really here. Greenwood wasn't on the official visit list. I checked. Rohan raised an eyebrow. You checked? I like to be prepared, she replied simply. I wanted to see where the money was going, he said, the practiced lie coming easily. Priya looked unconvinced. Well, now you've seen. We're very ordinary here, but somehow managing to educate the next generation despite that limitation. I never said education was ordinary, Rohan countered. No, just the people providing it, apparently. Priya met his gaze directly. You know, Mr. Varma, these ordinary children might not grow up to be billionaires, but some will become doctors who save lives, artists who move souls, or maybe even teachers who inspire the next generation. There's extraordinary potential in every ordinary person. For once, Rohan found himself without a clever retort. As he watched her walk away to supervise recess, he realized Priya Nair was the first person in years who hadn't tried to impress him. And ironically, that made her the most impressive person he'd met in a long time. 2 days later, Priya arrived at her classroom to find a delivery, 30 advanced plant growth kits and a handwritten note that simply read, For the extraordinary potential, RV. She couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips, even as she told herself not to be fooled by grand gestures from men with more money than sense. Behind the facades, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Greenwood Elementary's playground as Priya supervised the volunteers painting hopscotch patterns on the freshly paved surface. The school renovation project, mysteriously funded by an anonymous donor, was transforming the once neglected outdoor space into something magical. Ms. Nair, where should we put the new reading circle? Asked a familiar voice. Priya turned to find Rohan Varma in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, blueprint in hand. This was his 4th visit in 2 weeks, each time with some thin excuse about overseeing the investment. Today marked the first time he'd actually dressed for physical work. Under the oak tree would be perfect, she replied, still uncertain how to feel about his persistent presence. But shouldn't your project manager be handling these details? Surely you have more important things to do than painting playground equipment. A genuine smile, not his camera-ready one, crossed Rohan's face. Would you believe I fired my weekend golf instructor to make time for this? Tragic sacrifice, Priya deadpanned, but couldn't help returning his smile. As they worked side by side installing weather-resistant bookshelves for the outdoor reading area, Priya noticed how Rohan interacted with the other volunteers, parents and teachers who had no idea that the man in work clothes laboring alongside them was worth billions. He asked thoughtful questions, listened attentively, and seemed to genuinely enjoy the manual labor. "You're different when there aren't cameras around," she observed during a water break. Rohan paused mid-sip. "Is that a compliment, Ms. Nair?" "An observation," she clarified. "You're less arrogant," he supplied. "I was going to say performative," and she corrected, "though arrogant works too." Instead of taking offense, Rohan laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Fair enough. Maybe I'm just tired of performing." Later, as sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Priya found Rohan sitting alone on one of the new benches, staring at his phone with an uncharacteristic frown. "Everything okay?" she asked, sitting beside him. He showed her the screen. A gossip site running a story titled "Billionaire Bachelor Slumming It?" Rohan Varma spotted at public school. "They have photographers following me now," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "Even here. Welcome to life as a teacher. We're constantly being photographed doing scandalous things like educating children," Priya joked, but her expression softened when she saw genuine distress in his eyes. "It's not the same," he said quietly. "You do meaningful work. People like me. We just accumulate wealth and power while convincing ourselves it matters." The vulnerability in his admission caught Priya off guard. For the first time, she glimpsed the person behind the polished facade, someone perhaps as lost as he was successful. "Why did you really come back here, Rohan?" she asked, using his first name for the first time. He looked at her for a long moment. "Because when I'm here, I feel like I'm doing something real, and maybe," he hesitated, "because you're the only person who treats me like I'm just a person, not a bank account with legs." As darkness fell, they walked together toward the parking lot. Priya's ancient Honda sat beside Rohan's sleek Aston Martin, a visual metaphor for their different worlds that wasn't lost on either of them. "There's a planning meeting for the science fair next Tuesday," Priya said as they reached her car. "We could use another volunteer, someone good with numbers who can help the kids with their data analysis." "I might know someone," Rohan replied, with a half smile. Watching him drive away, Priya tried to ignore the flutter in her chest. She had spent weeks dismissing him as just another wealthy man playing at philanthropy. Now she wasn't so sure. What she didn't know was that Rohan was already rearranging meetings with international investors to make time for a school science fair, something that would have been unthinkable to him just a month ago. Neither realized they were standing at the edge of something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about worth, value, and what truly made a person extraordinary. The revelation. The science fair was a whirlwind of activity. Children darted between display boards, parents snapped photos, and judges circulated with clipboards. In the center of it all, Rohan knelt beside a nervous 7-year-old named Layla, helping her adjust her volcano model before the judges arrived. "Remember what we practiced," he encouraged her. "Deep breath, speak clearly, and explain why you chose to modify the traditional baking soda reaction." Layla nodded solemnly. "Because I wanted to demonstrate real volcanic viscosity properties using non-Newtonian fluids." Rohan grinned. "Perfect. You've got this." From across the gymnasium, Priya watched this interaction with a warm feeling spreading through her chest. The man coaching Layla bore little resemblance to the arrogant billionaire from the headlines. Over the past few weeks, she'd seen glimpses of who Rohan truly was when no one was watching. Patient, thoughtful, and surprisingly humble when learning new things. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her stomach drop. Exclusive. Rohan Varma's Ordinary Women. Comment resurfaces as mystery school teacher relationship exposed. The article featured grainy photos of them working together at the school, with speculation about whether the ordinary kindergarten teacher had somehow ensnared the billionaire. Worse, it included quotes from an anonymous source claiming Rohan's school involvement was merely an elaborate ploy to improve his public image after the backlash from his previous comments. Priya's cheeks burned as she read. Was that truly all this had been? A PR stunt with her unwittingly playing a role? She slipped the phone into her pocket just as Rohan approached, his smile fading when he saw her expression. Is everything okay? He asked. I need to check on the other classrooms, she replied stiffly, turning away. Later, after the fair ended and the last families departed, Rohan found Priya in her classroom, methodically organizing materials. Did I do something wrong? He asked from the doorway. Without responding, she handed him her phone with the article displayed. Rohan's face darkened as he read. This is garbage, he said, returning the phone. You can't possibly believe I don't know what to believe anymore, Priya interrupted. 3 months ago you declared on national television that ordinary women don't impress you. Now you're spending weekends painting hopscotch squares and helping second graders with science projects. What am I supposed to think? Rohan ran a hand through his hair, his carefully maintained composure crumbling. That I was wrong. That I was an arrogant fool who confused wealth with worth. That meeting you has been the most humbling experience of my life. His raw honesty hung in the air between them. Do you know what I've learned these past weeks? He continued quietly. That extraordinary isn't about achievements or bank accounts. It's about showing up every day to make a difference in someone else's life, even when it's hard, even when no one notices. It's what you do without recognition or reward. Priya remained silent, her defenses wavering. That day at the fundraiser, when you looked at me like I was just another person, not someone to impress or extract value from, it shook something loose in me, Rohan admitted. I've spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who only see what I can do for them. You were the first person in years to see through all that and find me wanting. He moved closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not here for publicity, Priya. I'm here because when I'm with you, I feel like I might actually become the person worth being. The tension between them shifted, charged with something neither was ready to name. Layla won first place. Priya said finally, changing the subject but with a softness returning to her voice. She said her special consultant gave her the confidence to try something new. A tentative smile formed on Rohan's lips. She did all the work. I just held the glue gun. Sometimes that's all people need. Someone who believes in them enough to help them hold things together. As they stood in the quiet classroom surrounded by children's artwork, both realized something fundamental had changed. The worlds they had built around themselves, his of wealth and achievement, hers of purposeful simplicity, were no longer quite so separate. That night, Rohan made a decision. The man who had once dismissed ordinary women was now planning how to prove himself worthy of one extraordinary teacher. Hearts transformed. Golden morning light streamed through the windows of Greenwood Elementary as Priya arrived earlier than usual. A folded newspaper sat on her desk with a yellow sticky note attached. Page 6, Principal Wilson. With trepidation, she turned to the indicated page and found herself staring at a full-page advertisement. At the top in bold letters were Rohan's infamous words, "Ordinary women don't impress me." But underneath was something unexpected, a public retraction. I, Rohan Varma, was wrong, the statement began. I confused net worth with actual worth. True extraordinariness isn't measured in accomplishments or assets, but in how we touch the lives around us. To the teacher who showed me this through her daily dedication to her students. You've taught me more about excellence than any business school ever did. I withdraw my arrogant statement and offer instead this truth. It is I who am ordinary, still learning what it means to be truly exceptional. The statement was accompanied not by Rohan's polished corporate headshot, but by a candid photo of him sitting cross-legged on the floor with Greenwood students, completely absorbed in helping them with their projects. Priya's heart raced as she reread the words. No publicity team had crafted this message. It bore the unpolished honesty of Rohan's own voice. Her classroom door opened, and she looked up to find him standing there, uncharacteristically nervous. Too much? He asked, gesturing toward the Newspaper. Definitely, she replied, but couldn't suppress her smile. You didn't have to make such a public statement. Actually, I did, Rohan said, entering the room. Not for you, though you deserve the acknowledgement, but for myself. I needed to publicly own my mistake. He moved closer, his usual confidence, replaced by genuine vulnerability. I've spent my life believing that success meant rising above others, standing apart. You showed me that real extraordinariness comes from connection, not separation. Priya studied him, seeing not the billionaire entrepreneur, but simply a man trying to be better than he was yesterday. So what happens now? You've had your epiphany, made your public amends. Is this where you return to your world of board meetings and acquisitions? Instead of answering immediately, Rohan reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, handing it to her. Inside, Priya found a formal letter announcing the creation of the Pinnacle Educational Innovation Fund, a $50 million endowment to support teacher-led initiatives in underserved schools, with Priya named as the inaugural director. What is this? She whispered, stunned. A beginning, Rohan answered. Not a grand gesture to impress you, but something that matters. The fund is established regardless of what happens between us. It's already in an independent trust. Priya set the letter down carefully. And what exactly is happening between us, Rohan? He took a deep breath. I'm falling in love with you, Priya. Not because you're extraordinary, though you are, but because you make me want to be better. You don't need my wealth or status. In fact, you've been happily living without either. But I'm hoping you might consider making room in your life for me anyway. The classroom fell silent, the weight of his words hanging between them. My life is here, Priya said finally. Small classrooms, tight budgets, finger paintings on the refrigerator. It's nothing like your world. I'm not asking you to leave your world, Rohan replied. I'm asking for permission to become part of it, to learn from you, to support your dreams while rediscovering my own. He gestured around the colorful classroom. I've built empires, but nothing as meaningful as what happens in this room every day. I want to be part of something real. Priya stepped closer, looking up at him, with clear eyes. I'm not impressed by grand declarations or million-dollar funds, Rohan. I'm impressed by the man who shows up consistently, who listens when children speak, who isn't afraid to get paint on his hands or admit when he's wrong. That's who I'm trying to be, he said quietly. Then maybe, Priya replied, taking his hand in hers, we can figure out what extraordinary really means. Together. 6 months later, Rohan still maintained his corner office at Pinnacle Technologies, but his schedule had permanently shifted to make room for reading to kindergartners every Friday afternoon. The man who once believed his worth came from what he owned now found it in what he gave, not just money but time, attention, and genuine care. And Priya, who had once dismissed him as just another wealthy man playing at generosity, discovered that true change was possible when someone had the courage to open their heart and rewrite their own story. As they walked hand in hand through the newly completed Greenwood Community Garden, their latest project together, neither the billionaire nor the teacher thought much about what was ordinary or extraordinary anymore. They had found something far more valuable, a love built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the daily choice to see the best in each other. In the QE, and it wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about becoming the people they were meant to be together.